welcome back to the Shreya Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Hendrickson, and I'm today here with Miss Sandy Dixon. She is a practical astrologer, and we are going to learn all about astrology and how we can use it to better guide us in our lives. So Sandy, thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Would you like to just give us a little bit of background on yourself before we jump right in terms of like how you got into this and
Sure. I've been in the personal growth field for over 30 years and started when I was coming out of college. And I thought I knew something was wrong anxiety wise and really dove deep into trying to figure out either through meditation, yoga, all sorts of healing modalities. And as I got older, realized that it's easier to teach people these things as I'm also working through them because a lot of my friends and the circles of people that I hung out with were very curious, but felt like there's just so much information out there. Where do you start? And I think as time goes on, even though astrology per se as a tool for wellness and personal development seems to be more accessible to people, there's still a lot to weed through. So what I do in my specialty is how to take really complex information and make it more practical, make it more streamlined and usable for whoever needs it. And it's something that I continue to use in my life. So I use astrology in particular, along with meditation, along with mindfulness practices, and I continue my yoga as well. So when you come work with me, it's like working with all the tools and all the experiences that I've had over these decades.
Yeah, and it really is a great experience from my personal experience. I'll let you know that it is very powerful information that Sandy is able to share with you. And it all makes a lot of sense if you're open to hearing it and growing and making some changes, or at least becoming more aware of who you are and why you do what you do, right?
That's it. The awareness is the key to growth. Awareness is where it all starts.
Absolutely. So when you start working with people, you often look at natal charts. What is that?
What's a natal chart? Well, an astrology natal chart is the date of your birth, the year of your birth, the exact time, and the location of your birth. When I put all those into a system, which any one of your listeners can do, they can just go to any website that is an astrology website and get what we call their natal chart, which then looks like a wheel. And it's a wheel within a wheel, and it shows you all the different zodiac signs and all the planets of where they were exactly at the time of your birth. And what that shows me then is a blueprint of who you are, your unique potentials, your abilities of high road and low road, and the alignment of your expression of you.
Mm-hmm.
So Ashley may be born exactly on a certain date at the exact same time as somebody else in the world. Your natal chart may look exactly like somebody else's out there, which I haven't found yet. But if that was the case, you both express it differently because there's so many different potentials inside that natal chart and how you decide to communicate with which aspects of that chart.
Interesting.
Does that make sense to you? Like when I remember when you first started, you said astrology was so new to you. Did you understand what that natal chart was when you saw it, when I showed it to you?
A little bit, but I don't really understand all of the intricacies of it. And it does make sense. Like I can see personality traits. And just so you guys understand, Sandy and I had very little interaction prior to her looking at my natal chart. I met her briefly. I listened to her talk. I didn't tell her anything about myself other than my birth date, time, and location. And she was able to very eerily nail some personality traits and behaviors. And what I thought was most interesting was specific dates that were significant in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, honestly, she had no idea anything about my history. So for her to be able to pinpoint dates that should have been significant and have them actually be significant was surprising, maybe is the right word, but really got me more engaged and interested in what you were saying because all of it resonated so deeply and with so little information.
Yeah,
so I thought it was really an interesting process.
It's usually how I win over people that are skeptical. what astrology is because, in any self-help book that you read or resource that you come across, whether it's enneagrams or John Holland's personality traits or whatever it is, you can, as a skeptic, and I think healthy skepticism is golden, you can look at all of those and say, well, yeah, couldn't this relate to almost anybody?
Mhm.
Well, in a way, well, because we're all human and living the human experience, yes, we have a lot of commonalities. But what makes astrology really unique is to drill it down, as you said, into those particular dates. And what those dates tell me are cycles, repetitive cycles in your life that
Mhm.
lessons or something has shown up. And were you awake at that time? Were you aware of what was happening at that time? I
Right.
have some people, I'll say a date and they'll say, I don't remember anything happening there. No, nothing happened. And it's not until after they listen to the recording, they'll come back and send me a message and say, oh my gosh, that date that you said, I can't believe I forgot this huge thing happened. That's the nature of our minds and our life. We live through these growth periods, and sometimes we forget until somebody like a practical astrologer invites you to come back to that point and say, whoa, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was something big.
Yeah, and so that was super, super interesting for me, and you hit on a couple of really significant dates in my history, that I mean, I knew were there, but it just was very, very interesting, and I wasn't necessarily a skeptic. I've always been kind of fascinated by astrology,
Mhm, mhm.
but when it starts to really resonate that deeply and that genuinely with my personal experience, it almost takes any of the potential skepticism out of it, because how could you possibly know those things? And you do point to lessons, which I think is what's so interesting about the way you work, because it is really practical. You are highlighting these experiences that were times of challenge or growth or opportunity, and being able to see it from that perspective and kind of make a shift in the way that you're moving through your life is really pretty powerful.
Right, and that's the opportunity of what I
Mhm.
considered astrology for personal growth.
Mhm.
We can go to an astrologer that does predictions, and
Right.
I've been to some of those. That's not how I work in a chart because to me, we all have this free will. We know this about humans. We want to feel like we have action of choice, and it shows whether you stay locked in patterns in your life of whether or not you really are making a choice. And when
Mhm.
I invite you into a more practical sense of how to use this for your growth, it's challenging you to activate other parts of your personality, of your emotional body, of your soul, and saying, hey, these are strengths that maybe you have been nurtured out of. And let's invite you back into it because once you start practicing it, even if at first it feels a little awkward, it's innately potential in you because I see it in your chart
Mhm.
and you'll feel completely different. I mean, I could ask you straight out of when you had one of those moments, was there something that I pointed out to you, a strength that you maybe had forgotten about or underused that suddenly, oh my gosh, now I'm using it and it's making some sort of a difference?
Yeah, and it is a little uncomfortable to start to use, the strengths or skills that have been kind of put on the back burner or pushed down or pushed aside, right? Because we've relied on other strengths to kind of get us through as coping skills or whatever. Um, so it's definitely a growth opportunity, and it is a challenge, but yeah, it definitely makes a difference in how you move through life, in my experience, right? The muscles that you start to flex because you remember that they're there and they're okay to use. Um, so it was very profound in my experience.
And also, I'll add to that, it's not just me leaving it in your court and saying, hey, for instance, you need to find your fun factor and start learning how to have fun. And you scratching your head going, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. It's been so underused or nurtured out of me. I've had to rely on these other skills for mainly survival. And that's usually what I see in people's charts is
Mhm.
we have to remember we've leaned into these areas because it helped us survive something. And not always something so traumatic, but remember, trauma is always defined by the individual, not from the outside person looking in. So if you felt threatened or your sense of stability or security was shaken, then you relied heavily on this particular part or skill set that you have in your chart. And I say something like, "Hey, let's start leaning into the fun factor. Where do you have fun?" And you're just like wringing your mind out going, "I don't know how to get there." Well, then that's where I invite you into other parts of your chart to say, well, how about we enter through this door? And if we enter this way, maybe you'll be able to find one little step towards that. So I don't just go out there and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, Ashley, go have fun this week and
Yeah.
report back and tell me what it's like."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's powerful. It really is. Um, but astrology's been around for a long time. You're the first person I've ever heard of doing practical astrology, right? I was like, the horoscopes and the
Yeah.
the year forecast, or what's this month gonna look like, or the
Isn't that
full
fascinating?
moon,
I
things
mean,
like that, right?
astrology has been around for thousands and thousands of years. Never considered a science, though. And I wanna make
Mm,
that really, really clear that this
right,
is not something that is scientifically proven. I wish it was. I wish a group of scientists said, "Hey, let's work with some astrologers and really see how we can, put a study together on this." But alas, that's not the case. So I think of this more as an art of personal growth. And very much like I'll go back to the enneagrams or personality tests that people take. Those aren't science either. They are based on many, many people over a course of time putting down experiences and finding a pattern throughout.
right,
And that pattern recognition needs to go a little step further in my estimation, the way I've been trained. So I do believe that there are plenty of astrologers out there that do practical astrology. We just don't always hear about them because what intrigues us in our mind the quickest is that mystical sort of, "Oh my gosh, how the heck did she know that? Well, when's the best time for me to move? And who will I marry? And when should I get married?" And other weird questions like that that I don't delve in. I choose to stay away from that because, again, you're putting the power into my hands as if I'm going to predict how
right.
you're gonna act. So, going back thousands and thousands of years ago, it started branching off. Astrology started branching off in many different forms. You have, um, different parts of the world, their astrologers look at things differently. And some it's not just based on the time and the date of birth. There's other factors in there. There's family components in there as well. Um, for those of you who do follow astrology that are listening, you may have heard something called whole house astrology versus what I do. I actually put the time of birth in and find these pieces or segments of your wheel that are called houses, and those are influential as well.
Mhm.
Um, these are all just little techniques to use. I would attribute it to like going to a therapist. And if you've gone to many different types of therapist, you find that overall, they have an underlying understanding of the same type of study that they've done. They've gone to school for it, they've, tested through it, they understand many, many things that are the similar foundation. But then they take it and make it their own. So that's why some people feel more comfortable with therapists that are more talk driven or more somatic driven or more, what's another one? Any other type of therapy. So that's basically with astrology too.
And so what's the difference then between the synastry readings and the natal chart? Is that kind of what you're talking about, the whole
Okay.
house? Or is that something
So so a synastry
different?
reading
Mhm.
is when I take someone's chart and overlay it with somebody else's chart.
Oh, okay.
Unlike and those houses that I talked about,
Uh-huh.
they come into play. We start to look at, okay, so if Ashley and Sandy's chart were put over each other, I can start determining where Ashley and I work the best together. I can see where, when she's emotionally dysregulated, I naturally knee-jerk react to her. And then I can also figure out a way to come back using other strengths of mine to help her as she emotionally regulates, and vice versa. If Ashley was trying to help Sandy do that, that's the type of synastry reading benefits, is looking at how energies work together. And it's really unique to that individual with the other individual. So I'll give you an example. I do synastry charts in families, and mom will come to me and she says, I want to know how I'm working with my kids. So we take it on a one-on-one basis first. And I'll say, Mom, first child, here it is. Here are the dynamics. Here's the way that your child's mind works. Here's the way your mind works. Here's the way you get emotionally dysregulated. And here's how she does. And I give them tips and tools. Then I take the second child and do the same thing. And how many kids? We just keep on going. I could do one big group chart, mom and all the kids, and say, here's the family dynamic in general of the unique energy that you as a group all come together on. And that can help truly when it comes to overall communication within the family. Like, this is almost like a family mission statement. It's very easy to start seeing, oh, this is what we do energetically as a family really well together. But now let's say that same example, if I take dad or the other partner and put them in with that first child, it's a totally different dynamic. It's a total different energy.
Sure.
Parents instinctively know this because they say, wait, how come I deal with my first child better than my partner does? Well, part of that is that unique energy between them. And once parents understand that, it's a lot easier for them to go neutral, first of all, instead of always trying to project their emotions onto their kids. Parent the child that they have in front of them instead of trying to force them into something else. And then
Sure.
reflecting the fact that anyone else dealing with their child isn't necessarily going to have that same unique energy. So you can do that between couples. You can do that between coworkers. Like I said, you can do that with you and myself. We can do that type of
Sure.
chart. But a regular natal chart reading is just straight up just you.
What's going on with you, right? And then how you can best interact with the significant relationships in your life would be the synastry. That's really interesting too, because every kid's different, right? And how many times have you heard people say that? You can't parent all the kids in your life the same way because not the same things resonate with them or work.
Definitely.
Right? They have different needs and different triggers and all sorts of stuff. So that's a really interesting tool for parents, I think, to have accessible to them if they are kind of struggling through, how do I best support my kid right now?
And I'll say something more to that because it is one of my favorite charts to do, synastry charts between a parent and a child. But I really encourage parents to get their own reading done first. Because if you don't understand yourself and you don't understand all your triggers and the stuff that you're needing to work on, you have no idea what you're projecting onto your child. You may think so. You may go, I've always had this like anxiety in me, and I'm sure my child picks up on it. Well, yeah, but where's that from? Where was that nurtured in or nurtured out? Is that part of the actual blueprint of, hey, this will always happen because your mind is running like this? Or is it because you're not utilizing these other traits in your chart? And so once you start understanding that and working with that, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to come in and work on the relationship between you and your child. What I find, though, is that most parents are so gung-ho on doing anything and everything for their child. They jump into that reading thinking, okay, tell me about my kid. I got to know everything and I want to perfect it. I got to change up what I'm doing. And I always invite them to say, let's take a step back. Let's look at you first.
Yeah.
Absorb that information. And then let's jump into how you're parenting.
Right. And I think that's so powerful. I had on the podcast a while back a couple therapy team on their husband wife, and they have the same approach when they're working with couples is you need to work individually on what your challenges are before you can fix what's happening in this union. And so I would say, obviously, the same thing would hold true with any relationship, but especially those really intimate ones like we have with our children.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it
You're
makes
right.
a lot of sense to have the awareness about what's going on with you, work on that, and then start working on these other relationships that may need a little bit of extra support or guidance.
Spot on.
Yeah. What about the skeptics who are out there right now listening, like, oh, yeah, there's no way Sandy could tell me anything about myself I don't know based on my chart?
Well,
What do
I'll
you
take it in a couple different skeptics, right? Because there are the skeptics out there that are my more earth and water driven people. What I mean by that is that every sign in the zodiac I put into a category of either air, fire, earth, or water. And those in general are easier for people to kind of wrap their head around, because I say to them, what are the characteristics of your air? What are the characteristics of your fire? Where do you express your fire? And most people understand, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So the earth and water people, and I'll just stick with earth first, if they're skeptical, it's because they feel they have it all figured out already. Like has to be practical, and there's nothing about astrology to them in their mind that seems practical. So I would tell them, come get a reading and let me show you the true practicality of it, and then make your decision. And I have yet to meet an earth person, a heavy earth dominated person, getting a reading from me that doesn't walk away and says, oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's a natural thing for them to see. There are takeaways. I give them directives, and they get to work on something that is concrete. The other type of skeptic, that water person, is usually I hate to say the Scorpios, because they really are usually people that have high Scorpio in their chart, because they are so protective of their vulnerability. And what they would rather do is just listen in and call you out on bullshit. And I hope I can say that on your podcast, but
Oh,
it's they they immediately have this X-ray sense of, yep, lying, nope, don't trust it, nope, not honest, nope, not authentic. And they're waiting for that instead of allowing the wall to come down and to hear about themselves. It's really
Mhm.
scary for them to see the mirror at times, even though they're built for going into the depths and the darkness and to do the work. So, what I would say to that type of skeptic is, you know best already. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know. It's just whether you want to be ready to see it and open
Mhm.
up to it. And if that's the case, I'm your girl. We're here. We can work together and try it anyway, because really, the Scorpio in particular, water sign person, they are so ready to hear about how to transform, how to make those changes. And astrology is a perfect way to get into that. Now, the other overarching skeptic is the person that's probably not even listening to your podcast. So I will just say that anyone who's listening to the podcast that says, my husband really needs this, I would say, no, you probably really need it. And you want to know about your husband's chart.
Mhm.
Because if your husband or partner or friend or coworker, whoever that is that has no interest in looking at astrology, calls it total bonkers, then why would I want to try to change their mind if that would mean that they're not ready for this type of step? And that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. I'm not trying to make everybody convert into believing astrology. My own family, I come from many people that are super supportive of what I do, but will tell me straight up, I don't understand anything that you do. And nor are they really curious about their own charts. It's like, I remember one of my sons saying to me, I know you know a lot about my chart and you're really, really intelligent about a lot of things, mom, but I just want to live my life. And then just tell me if I'm doing it wrong after the fact. I'm like, well, how about I show you your chart and we can walk through some of these things and give you some tools and strategies. But that's his personality. He's like a what I call a fixed personality. He's
Mhm.
stubborn. He wants to do it on his own, and that's okay.
I
Astrology.
can identify with that.
Yeah. So again, if that's what I would say to the skeptics, of the different types of skeptics. But
Sure.
anyone who's just sort of questioning it, who says, I don't understand it, I don't know if it's really um, true, authentic, I would suggest get a reading,
Yeah.
see what
Can't
it's like.
hurt.
Right.
I think some people sometimes are scared too. Like, what is she going
Yeah.
to tell me? I don't know if I want to know. But it's not scary, I would say, in my experience. It's just really insightful. And yeah, the opposite of scary. It really just is like kind of like this is kind of who you are and somehow you know, which is really weird.
Which can be a scary thing in itself, right? When a stranger actually can see things in you that you might not have seen in yourself, or you might thought you have hidden it well enough. So
Yeah, maybe. I think I'm a pretty open, vulnerable person, so that didn't feel scary to me. It was more just intriguing, like, wow, she really can see all this stuff based on like what I feel like is no information, relatively speaking, right? Like
Right.
you you that was the first time we'd really spoken individually, and you were able to tell me who I was, which was really wild, but really, really cool.
Well, I would say
And
those individuals that are a little scared, because
mhm,
honest, I've had over the years, there are certain people that will reach out to me and they'll just flat out say, I'm really worried about this. Now,
yeah,
if I already have their birth information, which really helps, I can help talk them through it. So
yeah,
you should try to coax them into like, well, at least give me just the birthday and year, even if you don't know the time. So I can help you bridge that gap, because usually
right,
that fear is somewhere in the chart on all things, not just astrology, not just about personal growth. It's
sure.
really a trait inside of you. But even if it's not, even if it was just towards astrology, I can see things in your chart that possibly can help you overcome that tension point. Um, but as in any personal growth, I mean, I remember the first time calling a therapist. This is years and decades ago. And the first therapist I ever called, I'm on the phone trying to vet her out if this is the one I want to go to. In my mind, thinking, this sucks. I don't want to go here. I already do my personal growth work. Why do I need somebody else to come in? I didn't think consciously, oh, she's going to tell me something I don't like.
Right.
It was more of, do I really want to have to open up all of that to a stranger?
Mhm.
How much do I really have to say to this stranger in order for the work to actually begin? And I think astrology for personal growth is the same mm, fear point for people sometimes, because they know I have the words personal growth or personal development after astrology. So it's like, if you look at my website, it will say astrology for personal development. And yeah, that means you're going to be possibly looking over the side of the cliff there and saying, do you want to jump?
Right.
Do you
Or
want to
looking
take
at
a
the
leap into
things
it?
that you've been trying to avoid for some time now, or you thought
Or
you
or
buried, or you
that you
thought
think
you dealt
you've got it managed. That's the
with.
big thing, right? If you
Right,
think you have it all managed, why bring a stranger into the mix and
right.
monkey up your whole
Stir
thing?
it all up. Right.
But I hope that I can show you that I come in with kindness. It's one of my traits from my chart that I've learned how to really lean into with people, is come in with kindness and come in with compassion. I have such compassion and understanding of where people are starting their personal growth journey.
Yeah.
And then we just go from there.
Yeah. And I would say that comes through without a shadow of a doubt. Like you are just so genuinely kind and compassionate and non-judgmental. There's never an ounce of that comes through in any of the conversations I've ever had with you. So it's a very safe space to start to do this kind of exploration for people who maybe feel like they need some support but don't feel safe doing it. You're really, really good at creating a very safe feeling environment for the people that you work with, in my experience.
Thank you.
Um, but looking at all 12 signs, right? Those are the ones that people are most familiar with, is like their
Their zodiac.
your
Yep.
sign, right? What's your sign? Um, but we all have like these high and low tendencies based on that sign. Or maybe we have those tendencies on all the signs based on how we're moving. I don't really know how it all works. But what are some of those tendencies and what do we see people kind of expressing in everyday life that you could say, oh, this is related to this particular energy
Okay.
or sign?
So instead of trying to break it all down with all 12 signs, because that could be a whole episode just in itself, and I'm
Sure.
hoping that over the course of time, we take apart just like one type of sign at a time to help
Yeah.
people see where that is in their life. I will say, you as a person, all of us have 12 signs in us. Whether I look at your chart and see nothing in that house or sign or not, you still have that energy in you that can get activated or played with when we move through moon cycles. And the
Okay.
moon moves through a sign every 2.5 days.
Hmm.
So we just ended with Libra, and now we're in Scorpio moon right now. And for 2.5 days, you play with this watery Scorpio energy. What can that look like on a high and low road tendency is what you asked.
Yeah.
So a high road emotional Scorpio, because we're talking moon, which is your emotional body.
Hmm.
So that emotional energy for a Scorpio could be low road, wall off, get very secretive, very stubborn or fixed in their line of thinking, or get addicted to a crisis moment because crisis defines them. What I mean by that is it could be crisis in their own life that they suddenly have to like, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart. And it's not panic for a Scorpio. It's like, I'm on it. I got to get this done. Or it's this exasperation of like, here we go again. I've got to solve something else. If you hear or feel that type of energy, it's usually because you're riding the low road tendency of a Scorpio energy of that moon cycle.
Okay.
And the flip of that would be Scorpios know exactly how to see the truth and authenticity in the situation. So if you feel like, okay, crisis happens, or somebody comes to you and dumps their crisis on your lap, but you're in the Scorpio moon energy, you have the ability to go, yeah, I really support you and hold you during this time of crisis. Let me know how it works out because I know you have the answer. It's a boundary, right? Not a wall. It's a boundary of caring and
Mhm.
compassion that Scorpios are really good at holding. They can sit with you through very painful situations, but not take it on, not do the work for you. So that's just Scorpio straight up. How is that affecting Ashley? How's that affecting Sandy? How's that affecting any other person who's listening? I would have to know where your moon is. And
Sure.
once I know where your moon is, and I'll use me as an example. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, so like my moon is Cancer. It's a water moon. So when I'm in another water moon activation period, that 2.5 days of the moon, the actual moon moving through, it could be one of two ways for me. I could get really overly sensitive during these 2.5 days because all my water's activated, all my emotions are there. It would be like crying at the drop of the hat or just emoting over anything. That's not necessarily a low road, depending if I can rebound or regulate from that.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a stress relief. We have to be able to get in touch with our tears
Sure.
and those strong emotions that we've been burying for so long. So the 2.5 day window might really allow me that opportunity, that energy to release. And that could be a good thing.
Sure.
If I can't rebound from it, if I can't regulate from it, then I would say, oh, my water is unhealthy. Why haven't I been feeling all along? And what do I need to do differently? How can I change this? How can I own my emotional state and create the boundaries needed so I have a container? Um, the high road of it would be that I can tune into the sensitivities and compassion during this 2.5 window period of listening to what somebody really needs and giving the support in my Cancer nurturing way, but with substance and depth that the Scorpio energy leads us or gives us at that time.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that sounds confusing or not. You give me some feedback. Does that make sense on how I'm saying this?
I think so. Yeah. I think like what I take away from it is you could, based on where your signs are and what is happening in the astrology world, you're either going to be able to come in and be supportive, or you may have a release of emotion that could be positive or negative depending on how much awareness you have around it and how you're able to move through.
Right.
Is that pretty
So
accurate?
now, if we take that the next step further, is that when the moon moves into Sagittarius, which will be after Scorpio, as a fire sign. And so now I get to play in that fire for a while and see, like, do I like this energy? Is it something that's comfortable? Do I feel really energized? Fire is a very energizing moon energy.
Mhm.
Um, and I can track it. And I get to do this every month. I get to move through, and you get to move through every sign of the zodiac
Mhm.
and every element. And then you start to realize which ones are a little trickier for you. If you've ever had a really, let's just say a really shitty couple days, right? And you're working with your moon, you can say, hey, what sign was the moon in during this? And what did I use? Remember, when we have quote unquote bad days, it's not bad 24 hours a day.
Right.
There's the ebb and flow of it. And so if we can start to tune into the finesse of it, that's usually when you work with somebody like myself, where we can say, hey, let's not just overgeneralize. Let's start to break it down. Today was a bad day, but on a scale of 1 to 10 compared to yesterday, and let's look at the signs the moon was in and what kind of energy was supporting you or not. Where
Mhm.
do you need to give yourself some grace and say, okay, that's just something I want to work on, but I'm not going to start holding myself to such a high standard here because I didn't make the mark. I didn't
Right.
ride the high road all the time through
Right.
all 12 signs. If we did that, my goodness, we would be so evolved. And
And what fun would life be then, right?
you have to take the roller coaster for a while. And I
Right.
believe that roller coaster also helps build compassion and resiliency. So when we're dealing with anybody else in the world, we can understand a little bit more about what they may be going through. We may never be able to step into their shoes, but we understand that energy. We've worked with that energy. We know the challenges of it because we've hit the low road many a times in those energies and
Right.
go, okay, where do we go from here?
And I think that's what makes anyone in the healing modality powerful. Powerful might not be the right word, but because they've been there, because they've worked through their challenges, the amount of empathy they have for what their clients are experiencing
Mhm.
is so different than from someone just trying to explain to you from like a technical perspective how to change or move through these challenges or crises that we're experiencing, right? And so when you've ridden the roller coaster and you've become aware of what that looks like and what it feels like and how to notice when it's starting to happen and what are my tendencies and things like that, and able to do the work yourself, then you're so much more effective at helping others from a place of non-judgment, from a place of being able to create safe space for them to have those same growth experiences, right? And generate that awareness for themselves. So, um, yeah, I mean, you kind of got to be on the ride
You got to
to
be on the
let
ride.
other people know what the ride is like,
And
right?
let's take this now just to the people that aren't in the healing industry, those that are just listening and saying, yeah, but what does that mean for me? Well, it
Yeah.
means that you'll be able to deal with your family in a different way.
Yeah.
You'll be able to deal with that coworker in a
Hmm.
different way. Compassion is what I believe the key to the growth and change for the world.
Right.
And when you start having the compassion for yourself, you open up and realize, oh my gosh, I have compassion for somebody else, not in a placating way, not in a degrading way, or what's the word I'm really looking for? That um,
Condescending.
condescending way. Thank
Yeah.
you. Right? It's you don't say like, oh, I now know, I know what
Right.
you're going through. No, you don't know. you just are familiar with that energy. You understand that energy. And so
Right.
you can give the grace over to somebody of, hey, I got you. I can support you.
Yeah.
Support comes from our ability to go neutral at time. And I don't mean neutral, a void of emotion, neutral in the sense of being grounded, being fully
Mhm.
present without trying to project all of our baggage onto somebody else while they're
Right.
going through something.
Right.
And that's a practice for a lifetime.
That's a skill for sure. I loved everything you've had to say so far, but let's wrap up with just a few questions that I have for you, and have
Okay.
a little fun with this.
I love it. Let's do it.
So, what is your favorite sign?
My my favorite sign, and this is such a Libra thing. I have a lot of Libra in my chart. My favorite sign is the sign that I'm in. So whatever the sign of the season right now, we're in a particular season, and that happens to be what I'm working on.
Great. And what's the most challenging sign for you? Is that the same one?
No,
Whatever you're in?
no. My most challenging, I can tell you straight up, is Pisces. Pisces is it is a tricky one for me, and it's in my chart. Pisces is like this sponge for the world, and it is so sensitive, but it's boundaryless. It's like the dreamer and the mystical, and there's so many other wonderful characteristics of it. But for me, Pisces is too amoeba-ish for me to really understand. I'm like, shoot, how do I get there? I'm so cardinal in my signs. I want to like have direction. I'm going forward. I keep having action. And you're telling me to just kind of,
Right, go with the flow.
yes. So I work on that a lot of finding the nice balance. Can I ask you, do you have a favorite sign with the little that you know?
I don't know. I like my sign.
Good. That's a good answer. You want to say what your sign is for
I'm a
people?
Leo.
Okay, so you're talking about your sun sign, and that's
Yeah,
your mhm.
yeah. I
People
like
need to
that
understand that.
energy, like that kind of fun, exciting, like fiery, that I like to be in that kind of energy. So,
It is a fun energy, isn't it? And
yeah.
that's Ashley's ego talking. So for those listening, that's our sun sign is our ego. It's our personality that shows up and says, "Come on, see me,"
Yeah,
or
let's have fun.
"Don't see me."
Yeah, don't always see me, but let's just go have fun. Like, let's do something exciting that's gonna kind of, make us feel alive.
Yeah.
Um, who is your favorite Pisces since that is your challenging sign?
A favorite, you wanna give me some? 'Cause I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of
Mm,
different Pisces here.
let's
You
see.
have
Catherine O'Hara
Catherine O'Hara.
or
Oh, you mean like, Catherine O'Hara from Schitt's Creek? Um,
yes. What's her name?
Moira. I love that
Yes,
character,
Mo
Moira,
uh-huh.
which, by the way, Moira is probably not so much Pisces. She may have a little in there. If I created a chart for Moira, oh my gosh, that would be hilarious, but there'd be a lot of Leo in her on the drama side, though.
Right?
Um, but Catherine O'Hara, what do I like about her as an actress is her ability to morph and shift. So I think that's the Pisces.
Yeah.
She she can make me laugh like no one else, and then suddenly, like morph into this quiet, reserved. It's the Pisces that needs to be alone, and then
Mhm.
she'll do some dramatic thing on screen, and I'll go, "Wow, how did you get there?" She's tapping really into the skills of Pisces.
That's cool. It's cool to be able to see it, like, in that type of like, real life example, what
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
gonna
Do you
say.
have another one? You wanna give me another one?
Who's James Bond? Who is that?
Oh, that's,
Daniel Craig?
Daniel Craig. Okay, that's a great contrast again, right? He plays this character of Bond, which is not a Pisces. Not I mean, maybe that very last one, you see the depths of his, emotional state that he's been hiding, but I would say that's probably more Scorpio in his Bond character. Um, but that physicalness that he has and that character has is, wow, it's not a Pisces.
Mhm.
Daniel as an actor, I think goes back to that statement I made about Catherine O'Hara. Um, he's been able to use the morphing. to create roles. If you've ever watched his characters throughout movies, they are so well ranged. He doesn't stick in just action. He is all over the place. Um, and you see a lot of his emotions through his eyes and through his expression. I think that's the Pisces influence that I love. I wish I knew him more though. Like I'd want to watch some more interviews
Mm-hmm.
to really see where this Pisces shines through.
Interesting. Now, when you mentioned meditation, are there some signs that will have easier times getting into meditation or practicing meditation than others?
Oh, you mean like because I do meditation myself and I teach it and I bring
Yeah.
it into all my sessions. So yes, there are signs that like our water people, our water friends that we've been talking about, Pisces and Scorpio and Cancer, meditation for them can be seemingly accessible. They're
Hmm.
like, wow, I'm ready to go deep. I can block out the world. I can just disengage from all the noise because I need to go internal.
Mhm.
The challenge for them in meditation, especially for someone like a Pisces individual, would be coming back to this present moment, getting grounded again and having roots, not staying lost in the ethers.
Mhm.
Um, Fire signs and air signs, whew, probably the hardest to get into meditation. Those are my clients that usually will say, I don't know where to. I'll ask you, where do you find meditating easy, Ashley, in your life? Because we know that you have some fire of Leo in your chart.
Mhm.
So,
I've been practicing for so long. Like I started learning meditation when I was in high school.
okay.
I didn't practice consistently over the course of my life, but over the last probably 8 years or so, I would say it's a relatively regular practice for me. But I do find that there are some days, and maybe this has to do with where the moon is at the time, I don't know, that are harder for me to, it's not to get into meditation, it's to make the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have too much on my plate and like, do I have 20 minutes to sit down and do this? Um,
Perfect description of what fire people automatically think of meditation. Really? I have to stop and do
right.
this? I can't. I've got so much going on. An air person may say, okay, I'll take the time. I know how important this is. But the minute I sit down, the thoughts are just, and I can't concentrate longer. And then I'm off and running again.
Mhm,
So those are people that I will say, let's try moving meditations first. Let's try
mhm.
to give something for the body to engage with so we can drop out from the head and
Yeah,
back into a
yeah,
place not always of stillness, but it's a place of groundedness.
right. And that's a pretty important distinction to make,
Hmm.
grounded
Definitely.
versus still.
We can do a whole session on just meditation and the signs. But overall, if someone has a question about it, I think it's really interesting to go to your chart first. Look at what planet and sign your planet Mercury sits in. That's your mind representation. Look at Mars. That's your energy, and see what sign it's in. And then those things combined can kind of give you an inlet or an invitation into how to get into a stronger meditation practice or mindfulness practice.
So if people should know one thing about their chart, is that what it should be, or is there something else that you think is
Oh
the
my
most
goodness.
important?
If there was one thing I want everybody to know about their chart is their big 3, their
Okay,
foundational piece. So that's your sun, your moon, and your rising. Now, some
okay,
of you are gonna say, "I can't get my rising because I don't know my exact birth time." Well, even if you just knew your sun and your moon, it will work so well for you to understand how do you emote and how do you show up. So those 2 pieces alone can really give you some direction of maybe some habits you've gotten into that you can shift out of the low road and into the high road of those areas.
now people I think are familiar with their sun sign because that's just their date of birth, but how do they know their moon sign?
Only by putting in that into the computer, like we talked at the beginning. You put
Okay,
in your date, you put in your year. If you have the time of birth, you'll also get your rising sign, and
okay,
the chart is generated, and it will show you a little moon icon, and you see what sign it goes to. Now, for
okay.
those of you who have no information about astrology whatsoever, don't do it yourself. Just come get a reading. And then I'll show you exactly what your moon sign is and your sun sign is and so forth.
And what about teenagers? Is there anything that they should know?
Oh gosh, yes.
It's
That's a
different.
really good question because teens, especially depending how young, we want to make sure, I want to make sure that I'm not giving them anything that's taking away their free will even more so. I am not trying to set them in stone of, hey, this is the path you should go. What I'd rather do is show them all their successes, because during the teenage years, when the prefrontal cortex of their brain is not fully developed yet, what we want to say is, you're okay and you're not broken. Let's take a look at that emotional body of yours, and which is the moon sign, and give you some techniques that you can work with it. When you notice that you're getting triggered over here, and what you can do differently, or to nurture it a little differently. I also would love to give them that sense of potential just in general.
Yeah.
It's not a potential of like saying, and one day you'll be a writer because in your chart it says you're really good in this area.
Right.
I would rather ask them, where do they see their strengths right now? Where do they see, what do they like about themselves? What do they don't like about themselves?
Right.
And then I can help them in that chart, which is, it's a much more pared down version than what an adult reading looks like, but it's so impactful. My teens, when they get away from a reading, I always get thank you notes from them. Always. It's through text messages, through emails. It's like, or I'll get stopped on the street if I've done somebody that's in my local area. Like, Sandy,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you did this. And it was just so amazing going off to college and actually knowing this about myself.
That's
So,
great. Good information for them too,
yeah.
especially like focusing on their strengths, right? And
Mhm.
what they're feeling good about. Okay. Last one
Okay.
is, what is the favorite part about your chart? Your favorite part about your chart?
It changes a lot depending on what I'm going through. Right now, at this very moment, my favorite part of the chart is that I see this independence in me. And I used to think it was something like I was broken somehow. It's what I call the Aquarian influence in my chart. And I think
Mhm.
you can relate to this, Ashley, because I know you've
Mhm.
got Aquarian pieces in your chart. I used to think that wanting to have freedom, wanting to break out and do me was somehow wrong.
Mhm.
My Cancer moon would feel very guilty about it, and like I have to be giving attention to these other people in my life. And now I'm starting to work at it with it in such a way that it's not like, oh, I'm the rebel and I'm going to do me and just me and cut everybody else out of my life. It's so much softer now. It's so much more integrated. I'm learning all the nuances of how to work with that Aquarian energy, and yeah, it's a big one. It sits opposite my rising sign. It plays with my moon. It's like it's so much stuff that I didn't realize in the very beginning, and I kept shying away from it. Like, yeah, I would just chalk up that Aquarian meant unique. Yeah, I'm a unique person. And I'm like, okay, that goes a lot deeper now. Where my
Yeah.
uniqueness is in relationships, how I do relationships, and how I show up as my unique self.
Yeah. I can relate to all of that,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah. Doing a lot of that same work myself right now. Um, so interesting.
it is.
I really thoroughly enjoy talking to you. Every time I learn something new and interesting, and it's always a fun conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to share all of your knowledge with us. Looking forward to following up in other episodes with you, getting a little deeper into some different signs maybe and what people can be expecting if they're in, that particular sign, what's going on in their lives right now. But in the meantime, if people are intrigued or curious or have questions, how can they reach you and how can they work with you?
Oh, wonderful. And first, I just want to say thank you because this has been a lovely, lovely treat, not to just to get to know you personally as a client, but on this working level, it is so enjoyable to just share information on all our phone calls. It's been fantastic.
I
So thank
agree.
you. How can people get in touch with me? www.sandy Dixon, Dixon.com. And that's my website. You can read more about the things that I do and how I can support you. You can send me a message through that site. You can also see me on Instagram at Sandy Gee Dixon. That's Geedixon. So either way.
Great. And then you're doing virtual sessions with them, correct?
Correct. Most of the time it's virtual.
Okay.
I am doing some local events right now in the Fox Valley area during these next few months. So you may see things pop up on my Instagram. And if you're local, yeah, stop by and see me in person. But yeah, overall, it can be anywhere in the world. And we do our session sort of like what we're doing now. And you get a recording of it for your records.
Awesome. And again, a great experience, so much insight shared during those sessions. So I do encourage you, if you're curious at learning a little bit more about yourself or how to capitalize on your strengths or identify and work on your weaknesses, or just, move through life at a little bit more
awareness, just having
awareness for the right way to say that. But yeah, that's it. With a little bit more awareness.
Yeah.
It's a
And
great
hopefully,
exercise.
actually, we can show your listeners and as they listen in how you use this in the work that you do, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just somebody doing on their own and never connecting with a third party. I think bringing a person in, whether it's an astrologer or a wellness coach or a therapist, is so vital to seeing the shadows, the things that we can't
Right.
always see in ourselves, and that encouragement and support to be able to go the next step. So
Yeah.
I
And
like
then
the
on
way
the
ours
flip
is.
side, it's also good to get that sort of sometimes validation or confirmation that you are seeing things clearly, or you are aware of your strengths and you are aware of your weaknesses and you're on the right path. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's equally important for people who are doing the work already and just need a little bit more guidance, maybe.
I love that.
So all around a great, great experience in my personal experience, and really appreciate, again, your time and your knowledge. So thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to follow-up sessions with you.
Wonderful. Thanks. Me too, Ashley.
Thank you all for listening. You can find Sandy on her website, and make sure you head over to Instagram and follow for any local events. She's in the Chicagoland area, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great day.